Hello and welcome to our OpenAthens Unpacked session. Today is all about API and analytics, taking control of your data. Um, Today's session will be run by Richard French, our Senior Product Manager, and Jenny McGuckian, our Account Manager. So I will hand over to you guys now. Okay.
Thanks. So today we are going to explore how you can get more out of your Open Athens data. So not just what's available in the dashboard, but how to unlock deeper insights using our reporting API. So whether you're technical or not, this session is designed to be clear, practical, and hopefully a little bit inspiring. Here's what we'll cover. First, a quick look at the reporting data you already have access to. Then we demystify what an API actually is in plain English. We'll dive into the OpenAthens Reporting API, what it does, how it works, and the kinds of data you can extract. And as part of that, we'll share some real-world examples from customers who are already using it. So why does this matter? Because when you have richer, more accurate data, you can make smarter decisions, whether that's optimizing your resources, improving your user experience, or demonstrating impact to your stakeholders. Ultimately, better data leads to better outcomes for your library and your library patrons. Okay, so let's start by taking a quick look at the reporting dashboard in OpenAthens Compass and explore how you can use it to monitor account and resource usage across your organization. So the reporting dashboard in OpenAthens Compass provides two main types of reports. So you've got account reports. So these focus on user activity. They help you understand how different accounts, e.g. students or staff, are using OpenAthens. So you can see which accounts are active, when and how often they log in, and where they're logging in from. The resource access reports focus on what content is being accessed. They show which resources, so for example, databases and journals, are being used, and how often each resource is accessed. And you can see trends over time. And the key features here are you can filter reports by date range, break down the data by attributes such as department, campus, and user group. This makes it easier to see usage trends across different parts of your organization. You can also export reports for further analysis or sharing with colleagues. And one of the most powerful features of OpenAthens reporting is the ability to break down data by user attributes. So attributes are the pieces of information about your users, like department or course or campus. And to use these in reports, you need to mark them as reportable in the schema editor. And this tells OpenAthens to include those attributes in your reporting data. So why is that important? So making these attributes reportable allows you to create more meaningful reports. For example, you can see resource usage by department or compare authentication activity across different campuses. This helps you understand user behavior and make those data-driven decisions about resource allocation and access policies. Aggregated data in OpenAthens Reports dashboard means you're looking at patterns and trends, not individual user activity. Instead of showing what one person accessed, it shows summaries like how many users accessed a particular resource, what time of day, who's busiest, so on and so forth. So, what is an API? So it stands for Application Programming Interface. Basically, it's a way for systems to talk to each other and share data. You use APIs all the time, even if you don't realize it. So weather apps, PayPal, Google Maps, travel booking sites, they all rely on APIs behind the scenes to fetch and display the data. So here's a simple analogy. Think of an API like a waiter in a cafe. Place your order, that's your data request. The waiter takes it into the kitchen. That's the system processing your request, and then they bring back your meal, in this case, a file or data response. It's a neat way to get exactly what you asked for without having to go into the kitchen yourself. So the OpenAthens Reporting API lets you extract your OpenAthens data and feed it into external business intelligence tools like Power BI or Tableau or even Excel. So going back to the waiter analogy, you place your order, that's your data request. The waiter takes it into the kitchen, that's the API server processing the request, and then they bring back your meal. In this case, it's a CSV file of your data set. So why would you want to do this? What are the benefits of doing this? So automate reporting workflows. So you can set up repeatable processes to fetch and use data without that manual effort. So that helps save time and reduces errors. Schedule data access, so you can pull reports at regular intervals, so that daily or weekly, to ensure your data is always up to date and ready for analysis. We can filter by dates or attributes, permission sets, and many more to get exactly the data you need for your specific use case. It integrates with external tools, so you can connect your OpenAthens data to platforms like Power BI, Tableau, and internal dashboards to centralize your reporting all in one place. And you can combine it with other data sources. So you can merge the OpenAthens data with data from a virtual learning environment or attendance data, CRM data to build a complete picture of user engagement. And it enables deeper analysis. So by exporting the raw data, you can have advanced analytics that support trend identification and visualization beyond what the OpenAthens reporting dashboard offers at the moment. You can get those more granular user insights, so you can understand how different user segments across your organization access resources, and this helps optimize service and improve engagement. And finally, you can use it to detect unusual patterns that may indicate issues, helping you maintain security and efficiency. So OpenAthens offers two versions of the reporting API. Both give you access to the data which you can use in the business intelligence tools, but they differ in what data they provide and how flexible they are. Both are useful, it just depends what you're trying to do. So the first one, the statistics report API, this provides aggregated resource usage data. So this is similar to what you see in the reporting dashboard, and you can access that data up to 4 years in the past, and you can break it down by one attribute or by a resource plus an attribute. So one attribute, group or filter all resource usage data by a single user characteristic. So for example, show resource usage by department, show resource usage by campus, show it by user group. The resource plus one attribute, so you start with a specific resource, say the journal or database, and then you can break it down by one user characteristic. So show usage of JSTOR by department, or show usage of EBSCO host by campus. And then the other version of the API is the raw statistics report API. So this is providing detailed event level data, including authentications and resource access. It covers the last 30 days only, and it includes all reportable attributes, plus extra details like block transfers and federation information as well. So it's more flexible, there's more data, but it requires additional processing because you are dealing with more data. So let's start by looking at the reporting statistics API. So how do we get a API call for the aggregated report? So this is the one that's already has the numbers added up. So they're the same resources, reports that you can download from the reporting interface. And the first step is to get your API key. So it's here in the admin area under the management menu. And we recommend that you set the permission level to reporting. If you don't see these options, you can talk to your account manager about enabling the API access in your reports. So now we have the key, let's use it. But the first view is a tool used to test the API calls for Postman. You would use something else to automate things, but this splits out the parts quite neatly so you can see them. Here we see the API address. For this example, including a few parameters to set the options. The aggregator reports allow you to set the date range, granularity, and breakdown options, as well as scope and resource. And usually when you fire off that API call, you get a response that says finished and a link to download your report. Reports can be quite big though, so when you fire off a request, the response might say running and provide a link to check again. And any automation that you do set up should be prepared to deal with that. The file you download is the same that you would get from the reports interface. And when it comes to automating things, there's lots of different options. You can script it into various languages. There are ways to do it in things like Power Automate and even Apple shortcuts. So the process for capturing and pulling that API call for the aggregated reports, the statistic reports, is the same process as well for the raw reports API as well. So you follow that same process in the admin interface and get the API key for that for the raw reports as well. So with the aggregated reports available from the reporting interface or the API, they arrive as a flat CSV file. So flat just means it hasn't been cross-tabulated yet, which in turn means it only has the column headings. This is a good thing because it allows you to decide how you want to view the data. So for some people, they can see what they need to see using the spreadsheet filters. Others like to use pivot table functions to lay out the data in different ways. For example, if you would set username as reportable and had over 16,000 of them, an Excel user would want that as rows instead of columns. And as you can see, it only takes a few seconds to do a basic pivot table. There are more things you can do with pivot tables, and there are plenty of tutorials online to help with those. You can also use business intelligence tools, as I said, such as Tableau or Power BI to blend in data with your own systems, as long as you have a suitable field to join them up to a unique field that can tie up the different data sources. So here's an example of where a university might have a student number set as reportable, and then use that to connect in some details about the user from other systems, such as their name, their year, their course, whatever's needed to be linked to. Okay, pass over to Jen now.
Hi, so I'm going to just talk about one of our case studies, Anglia Ruskin University. So they decided to start using the reporting API as part of a project to enhance their data around student retention. So the problem was that they wanted to look at student retention, how to improve that, particularly at that start of the academic year where there could be a higher dropout rate. The goal was to be able to easily identify disengaged students and to then enable early intervention. And their solution was to build a student engagement dashboard. So this dashboard pulls data from various places, one of them being the OpenAthens resource usage data. They also look at classroom attendance, their virtual learning environment activity, and also library entry logs. I think that's people physically visiting their library. And all that data was pulled into a dashboard, which enabled Anglia Ruskin to monitor engagement at an individual level, but also the cohort level. So The outcome was that they have considerably improved their student retention, which is great. I managed to meet Alex at Access Lab just last month and asked them how they were getting on with their engagement dashboard, and they're still using it and it's still helping. So that's all really positive. He said, got a little quote from Alex here saying that they work with students who are noted to not be engaging with the course or who appear to be struggling, and that previously there was no easy way to measure this kind of student activity. So specifically how the reporting API from OpenAthens helped is it's really about that automation piece, getting that nightly data feed into their dashboard. This massively reduced workload as there's no need for manual reporting. The data is reliable and efficient. And it's really helped Alex, who, it's his sole role to be looking after all the data requests. So it's been really useful for him. So we have a case study that's published on the website, and there's a link to it there. And I think Liv's going to put the links in when this gets sent out. I'll hand it back over to you, Rich.
Thank you. Okay, so let's look at the raw statistics report API. So unlike the aggregated reports, this gives you time-stamped user activity down to the second. So you'll see authentication events, resource usage, even data on block transfers, which is great for spotting things like access issues. It also includes federation context and all reportable attributes that you configured in the OpenAthens dashboard in the schema editor. So the only limitation really is that you can download one day at a time, but the level of detail, it was vast. So here we can see standard headings for the raw reports. Lines that won't necessarily have data for all the headings, only those relevant to the event. So you can see some gaps here. And there's the list of headings and events with explanations in the documents. And at the end, you can also see any attributes highlighted in yellow that you've marked as reportable in the studio editor. Whilst you can open up raw reports like we've done here in Excel, the real value comes when you feed it into business intelligence tools such as Tableau and Power BI, because you can easily link it with other data. So let's have a look at a few reports that have already been built. This is using data donated by a customer that we've anonymized, and it includes reportable fields that they've already set up. But these really could come from any source as well. So this first report shows how you can have more dimensions than the standard aggregated reports that you get from the reports dashboard. In this case, resource access by faculty, department, resource, and user ID, all over time. The second report features restrictive mode turnaways. When you activate restrictive mode, it means we will only respond to resource if that user is in the correct permission set. So these resources are either ones that the site does not subscribe to, or it's restricted to specific user groups. And what we've got here, if we drill down, is the relevant information, federation information from the raw data plus department from additional fields or sources. And this third report is about where the users were. So this has been filtered out the UK, where the data donor is based. So there's more contrast amongst the others. Here we can step through day by day and see if there's anything unexpected. And this one shows what we might set up to see individual user activity. And the final example is designed around a situation where a provider gives you a date and a time when someone has signed in and it looks suspicious. So let's say it was eBook Central on the 16th of September at 11:27, and we are able to identify them. So all of these examples just run through all based on raw data files, and those are multiple fields that Martin has seen later. So back to you, Jenny.
Yeah, so we've got another case study here. So this is University of North Carolina, Charlotte. So they were wanted to look at enhancing student success. So one of the problems they were facing was that the manual reporting was taking several days each term and it lacked granularity for strategic analysis. The goal was that they wanted to automate data collection and enable deep insights into the resource usage and student engagement. So the solution, again, was building a dashboard. Actually, so I don't know if it was a dashboard, it was several dashboards for this example. And they used the reporting API to pull data into their dashboards. And they integrated student information from their student info system. And they built these various Tableau dashboards, which I think we've got some images of, which is nice to share. They'll come up to those in a moment. So the outcome for them obviously was the data processing time was massively reduced from days to minutes. These dashboards are available to all library staff and they enable quick reporting for strategic planning. So what they used to spend days doing is now possible in just moments. And the nice thing here is we've got some visuals of what their some of their Tableau dashboards look like. So I'm not going to go into the details of what each of these is showing, but you can see there's information about resources, how they're being used across different sessions, different and some information about graduation rates as well. So that automated daily feed is really key to being able to set up these dashboards. And again, they're happy about the reliability of the granular data and being able to correlate that engagement with student success metrics has been really great for them.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. Okay, so before we wrap up and move to questions, let's just recap the benefits of the OpenAthens Reporting API we've explored today. So, through the demos and the case studies, you've seen those benefits in action. So, how the scheduled data access and automation can save huge amounts of time. The custom queries and integrations with tools like Tableau enable that deeper analysis, and how granular data opens up new insights from resource usage patterns to security monitoring. And importantly, how combining OpenAthens data with other sources like VLE activities, CRM records, attendance log can create a complete picture that helps support strategic decisions and even student success.
So just thinking about next steps, if there's been some interest in what we've spoken about today, if it sparked some ideas for you, the best thing to do is to contact your account manager. So you can either reach out to us individually if you know who your account manager is. If you're not sure who your account manager is, you can use the account manager email address, which is shown on the screen at the moment. Um, and I know that Olivia is going to share some of the resources that we've spoken about today, the web page about the reporting API and also the case studies. Just as a reminder that about cost, the subscription is to the reporting API is an additional add-on. So it's in addition to your OpenAthens subscription. You get both types of the API discussed today included in that one price. The actual costs vary depending on whether you're a DISC member or not, which sector you operate in, that type of thing. So it's best just to get in contact with your account manager for that kind of detail. And if you decide to go ahead for it, it's a really easy, quick process to get the API key enabled for you. Back to you, Rich.
Thank you. It looks like we've had a couple of questions. So, the first question we've got is, do I need any specialist skills to use the APIs?
So it's not complicated to set up the reporting API, but you do need to have somebody technical. Somebody who's got the basic knowledge of APIs and a bit of coding and data handling. But the actual setting up of the API is very quick.
Amazing, thank you. Next question is, does it work with Panorama?
Yes, so EBSCO Panorama, it does work with that. Yes, so Panorama uses Tableau as its front-end visualization tool. So yeah, you can ingest the raw reports, the API data into Tableau and combine it with other data sources there.
Great, thank you. And looks like our last question, a bit of a bigger one this time. So, does the reporting API return data from all organization levels, or do they need to be set up for specific sub-organizations? So, in the same way you would need to switch up the organizations in the reporting dashboard to view sub-organization data.
Yeah, so the API works at the organizational level. So when you authenticate using your API key, the data returned is scoped to that organization. If your organizational structure includes sub-organizations, you'll need to generate API keys for each sub-organization, and then make separate calls for each sub-organization to pull that data. So that, yeah, this mirrors the behavior in the reporting interface in the dashboard, where you have to switch organizations to view their reports. So yeah, for example, if you manage a consortium with multiple libraries, you would run separate API calls for each library within your consortium to get that accurate usage data.
Amazing, thank you. I think that's all our questions. So that's just leaves me to say thank you so much to both of you for running today's session. We hope it was really useful. Obviously, if anyone's got any further questions, they can reach out to us. And we'll see you at the next session. So thank you so much, Rich. Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.